Welcome to Under Baobab Skies. The sun rose like a blade that morning. It didn't climb, it cut, and beneath its burning edge, Mena, son of no one in particular, tied a strip of linen around his forehead and whispered a prayer he didn't remember learning, a silent plea to the gods he wasn't sure were listening. The air smelled of wet clay and sweat. It was a familiar perfume, the scent of survival. The river had already spoken, the great Nile had receded, leaving its rich brown silt behind like a blessing too heavy to carry. A gift from the gods that demanded a price in human toil. And Mena, like thousands of others, was there to turn that blessing into bricks. He stood at the edge of the pit, the first rays of dawn painting the water a soft, hazy gold. All around him, figures moved in the dim light, their bodies already stooped, their feet already sinking into the earth. The work began before the heat. That was the rule, the unspoken law of the land. The overseer's shadow was already long, a stark, threatening shape stretched across the muddy ground. His whip, coiled at his side, was already ready. It was a silent promise of the day to come. Mena's hands sank into the mud, thick, cool, unyielding. It was a strange embrace, both comforting and smothering. He scooped a heavy handful, slapped it into the wooden mold, and pressed down with all his might, forcing the water out, compacting the earth into a solid block. Then, a quick, practiced lift, and he placed the wet brick carefully on the ground to dry in the sun. Again, and again, and again, 1,000 times before the sun reached its throne. They said the gods watched. They said Ra sailed his solar bark across the sky, his divine eye seeing all, but the gods, Mena thought, did not have to breathe this dust. They did not feel the sting of sweat in their eyes, or the ache that settled deep in the bones. Still, there was something holy about the rhythm. The constant, thudding chant of hands against clay. The soft hiss of drying earth as the sun grew stronger. The distant, mournful call of cranes winging their way along the river. Every sound was a reminder that his small, repetitive labor fit into something enormous, something eternal. He was a single note in a symphony of creation, a song that had been sung for generations. He would never see the pharaoh's tomb from the inside. He would never touch its cool inner stone, never see the painted gods and gilded treasures meant for the afterlife. But he knew his bricks would. They would form the walls, the foundations, the very bones of a monument that would outlive him. His children and his children's children. And that was enough. It had to be enough to keep his back straight and his spirit from breaking. When the sun was highest, the air turned to fire. The world shimmered in the heat. Mena's linen stripped darkened with sweat. His tongue was sand. He thought of the stories his mother used to tell, tales spun in the cool of the evening. Stories of Osiris, the green-skinned god of the underworld, and the fields of reeds where the righteous rested for all eternity. He wondered if builders like him ever made it there. Did the gods welcome hands calloused by labor, or was heaven reserved for those who never knew the crushing weight of a brick? Beside him, his friend Hori collapsed. He didn't cry out or stumble. He just dropped, like a shadow breaking off from the sun, a silent heap on the hot ground. The overseer barked an order, his voice sharp and impatient. Two men, without breaking their own rhythm for more than a moment, dragged Hori aside. They poured a little water from a precious skin onto his face, then turned and went back to their pits. No one stopped working. No one dared. To stop was to invite the whip to draw the eye of the man who saw them not as people, but as tools. Mena looked at the fallen man, his chest rising faintly, a fragile sign of life, and turned back to the mud. He pressed another brick. The sound it made, that soft, wet thud, stayed with him. It was the sound of one more life, almost spent. Later, when the evening finally came, bleeding gold and violet across the sky, Menna sat by the river. The water shimmered like liquid glass, calm and cool. He washed his hands in silence, watching the mud swirl away in thin streams of brown and memory. The day's labor, the dust, the sweat all dissolving into the eternal current of the Nile. His fingers were split and raw, the skin broken in a dozen places. But he felt something else, a feeling that bloomed in his chest as the ache in his muscles subsided. It was pride, the quiet, stubborn kind that came from knowing tomorrow would come again. With all its hardship, and he would still be here to meet it. He had survived another day. He thought of his father, who had died this way, not in a glorious battle, but in a dusty pit, building something larger than himself. He had left behind no name on a monument, only the silent testimony of the walls he helped raise. And Menna thought of his son, still too small to lift a mold, but already mimicking the motion with pebbles at home, his small hands patting the dust. That was how men were remembered in his world, not by names carved in stone, but by the hands that built what others prayed in. It was a legacy of persistence, written in earth and water. As the first stars began to pierce the darkening sky, Menna lay on his back in the cool sand. The world was quiet now, except for the soft hum of insects and the far-off, constant whisper of the river. He traced the constellations with his finger, the ship, the scorpion, the hunter, the same star patterns his ancestors once read as messages from the divine. In them, he imagined his own story, not one of glory or fame, but of simple endurance. A story written not for kings, but for the sky itself. He didn't dream of palaces or fields of reeds. He dreamed of practical things. He dreamed of mornings when his body would still obey him, when his back wouldn't scream in protest as he rose. He dreamed of bread that didn't taste of dust, and a long drink of cool, clean water. He dreamed that one day, centuries from now, someone might look upon the stones he laid and understand. Understand that beauty often begins in pain, and that eternity is built, piece, by the nameless. Tomorrow, he would rise again before the sun. He would dip his hands into the wet clay, press, lift, and lay. He would hear the overseer's voice, sharp and demanding, and he would answer it with the steady, defiant rhythm of his work. Because, in that silence, in that focus, he was strong. His hands were his voice, and his bricks were his words. The Nile would flood and fall, a cycle as old as time. The gods would sleep and wake in their heavenly realms. Kings would rise to power and vanish into memory. But the bricks would stay. They would hold the weight of time itself. And somewhere within that weight, within the silent spaces between the clay and straw, Menna's breath would linger. It would whisper through the cracks of the temple walls, a story told to the wind, invisible yet present, like the river's memory locked in the soil. And so, when you walk among the ruins today, when you run your hand along the ancient sun-baked stone and feel its warmth seeping into your skin, you are touching him. You are connecting with Menna, son of no one in particular. A man who turned mud into forever. This was just a glimpse into the lives that built a civilization. To see the full story, the grand tapestry of these forgotten lives, watch our full 2-hour documentary. The link is in the description below. You are under Baobab Skies.